There has been some conservative rumblings about wanting to create a constitutional convention for both a balanced budget amendment and term limits. Now, both concepts are very popular according to a lot of polling. Would you support either or both of those ideas in a constitutional amendment?
Well, let me preface it by saying, be careful what you wish for. People always think about what they like is going to come from making changes, but they don't think about the downside. So constitutional conventions make me very nervous because who knows what's going to happen in this polarized environment. We could get some things that we don't wish for. But answering your question, I don't think that term limits overall are a good idea. I think we do have term limits. They're called elections. I do think that we need to reform our election system. I think term limits are simplistic at best, and they are democratic at worst. And I think that you shouldn't penalize the voters for the flaws of the systems. Now, I would support term limits, for example, even the 22nd Amendment, which was passed by a reactionary one-term Congress in the wake of FDR, which limits the presidents to 2 terms. I don't support that. The term limits I would support, and of course, I don't think this will ever pass. No one over 80 should be allowed to run for federal office. It's ridiculous that Chuck Grassley is running again for the Senate at 88. I know people are going to accuse me of ageism, but that's pragmatism. Secondly, for governors and presidents, you should be allowed to serve as many terms as you want, but not more than 2 consecutive terms. So you have to come out and give someone else a chance. And if you're really good and people want you back, they'll have you back. Thirdly, I would support some kind of limits for the Supreme Court in terms of time. I'd like it so that every president gets to appoint 1 justice per 4-year term. And that way, because too much is at stake and it's become so politicized, and that was one of the few remaining things that wasn't broken that Mitch McConnell broke. He's managed to break almost everything in DC. And that was the Supreme Court nomination process. It used to be that if you were qualified, even if you were conservative or liberal, you would still get a vote. Even Elena Kagan and Sotomayor got over 67 votes. They got 2/3 majority votes, but that's.
I think Robert Bork might have something to say about that.
Yes, Robert Bork. I agree. I'm not saying it was just on the left, but it's become there's so much at stake now. So those are the 3 types of term limits that I would support. But as far as the constitutional amendment to balance the budget, I think that's really, really dangerous. I mean, if we'd had that in place during the financial crisis, we would have gone into a depression that would have been still lasting now. There are times when things are, my thing is you should spend money and lower taxes when the economy's in a hole. My major problem with the Trump tax cut, why I thought it was the worst piece of legislation ever passed, was you don't cut taxes when the economy's humming. You don't need to spend more when the economy's humming. You need to spend more when the economy's in a rut to get it out of that rut. This is not complicated. So no, I would vehemently oppose a balanced budget amendment. I think it's
what about balanced budgets if certain conditions were met, to your point on the economy, the state of the economy? So that if we were in crisis, then it wouldn't be in, but it would be triggered if things were actually going according to certain.
But Carrie, Congress could balance the budget anytime they wanted. It's
right, but that's the point is that they're not. Move. So this would force them to. That's the whole.
Yeah, but it forces them to in a dangerous way. If I could hear some of those conditions, I would. I'm an open-minded guy, but right now I think it's a terrible idea. And you talk to economists on both sides of the aisle, and they agree. I mean, again, it's Congress once again just kicking the can down the road. It's Congress chickening out because they don't want to make the hard decisions that they need to make. So. I'm open, but right now, vehemently no. So
I think we've seen it happen.
Go ahead. No,
I was just going to say we've seen that happen at the state level where they have passed balanced budget amendments.
Well, the states have had to balance budgets for a long time, and states also can get federal money, right? So it's kind of an apples and oranges thing. So again, maybe we just agree to disagree on that one. But again, I don't know of any conditions that would change my mind, but I'm always open.